to the Coach V Show, your Hollywood radio show for personal development, here on Island City, where the beach meets the streets, as we feature Mr. Philip Darke, who brings the wealth of knowledge from his worldwide vantage point and perspective, from traveling everywhere through soccer, his hundreds of interviews on his 3 podcasts, and his unapologetic faith to you. Here on the Coach V Show, where iron sharpens iron, together we rise. Now a word from our sponsor.
Say, for things to change, say, I must change. Say, if I don't change, say, nothing changes. Say, if I do change, say, everything. Who's ready to get better?
Look for in all you guys is a champion. The 3 main things that we try to go by is character, choices, and champions.
What it is that you, me, and we do for ourselves brings progress. What we do for others brings fulfillment, and what we do in both earns success.
You are now tuned in to the Coach V Show.
Welcome to the Coach V Show, your Hollywood radio show for personal development, with expert insights and interviews to help you, me, and we work to be our best and live our best life. Bringing to you, which Phil and I will be attempting to do, success frameworks, behavioral models, and life lessons that you can now extract what works for you and then deploy it all over your success and your life fulfillment. In that today, I am so excited to have our guest, Phil, in the house, and he is so many things and mostly a man of God. And I met this brother on the golf course where he didn't make fun of me for having no golf game. I still have no golf game today, but I'm working on it. And so Phil and his wife, Becca, and their 5 children live here in the 91 Sizzle of Folsom, California. He is the president of Providence World and nonprofit developing organizations around the world to help children and families flourish. He also founded and hosts 3 podcasts: How Soccer Explains Leadership, Think Orphan, and Coaching Character. Let me say that again for these 3 podcasts so you can subscribe to them. Is How Soccer Explains Leadership, Think Orphan, and Coaching Character. As a certified personality insights DISC consultant, he has a passion for developing leaders in sports, much of which came from playing, coaching, refereeing, watching, and otherwise studying sports and leadership, and as much as anything, learning from parenting 5 athletes at different levels from preschool to university. Phil received his JD from Vanderbilt University School of Law and his BA in Rhetoric and Communications from the UC Davis. Shout out Ags. Phil worked as an attorney with different firms in Sacramento, California, and also in Hotlanta, Georgia from 2000 to 2008. And for 1 year as a clerk for a federal judge in the 808 of Honolulu, Hawaii. Shout out 808. In 2014, Phil released his collaborative book project, In Pursuit of Orphan Excellence. Above all, Phil is a child of God who connects, catalyzes, collaborates, coaches, facilitates a flourishing, and seeks to create a little bit of shalom in every community he touches. Everybody, please welcome here on the Coach V Show, where iron sharpens iron, together we rise, here on Island City, where the beach meets the streets, Brother Philip Darke. Welcome to the show, Phil.
Hey, thank you so much, man. I apologize for that novel bio I gave you. Jeez, Louises, man, that thing's long. I got to shorten that sucker. But thank you so much. I'm very excited to be a part of this.
Oh, no, don't apologize. We need to let the people know who Mr. Philip Darke is. We have to, so that we can really figure out ourselves and then learning from you, all of us. I will be taking notes as well. Philip, let's stop the suspense. Where, I mean, you've been in Atlanta, you've been in the 808, so Hawaii Name knows, you know all about Aloha Friday and Mana Motivation Monday,
Oh yeah.
right? You understand that whole deal. Where is the genesis point for Philip Darke?
Well, I was born and raised down in Southern Cal. So I'm a California boy, tried and true. Mission Viejo Hospital was where I was born. My mom still works there. She unfortunately right now is a patient there. You know, we're continuing to have faith that the people that she works with will continue taking care of her. And but yeah, born and raised there, came up to Northern Cal for college. And as you said, was at UC Davis. I had a short stint at University of California at Berkeley, so down the road. Soccer player, tried and true from age of 4 to today, and now I'm still coaching and doing a lot of stuff in that area, as you said, how soccer explains leadership. But yeah, as you said, the genesis really is down in Southern Cal, just living down there. I was never a beach kid. You talk about the golf course, was never a golfer. I still am not. I mean, you and I were hanging out in the golf cart, letting other people carry us on that foursome.
Yes, sir.
Not
Yes,
gonna
sir.
lie, but that's a lot of fun there. But yeah, just really continually. I mean, you talk about leadership, you talk about the different things that I've been able to do in my life and I'm continuing to be able to do. And the things that I've always kind of known in the back of my mind is just that having that learning posture. Just I'm a learner. And I've been able to do that really everywhere that I've been, to be able to have amazing people in SoCal, amazing people when I was at UC Davis, went out to Vanderbilt, been taught by some of the best law professors on the planet, able to go out to Hawaii and learn from a judge who is one of the most amazing men that I've been able to work for. He was my mentor, still is. He's now actually in San Antonio, Texas, still being a judge, doing his thing there. Yeah, then I was able to go to Atlanta, as you said. That's where my wife actually was on Athletes in Action staff at the University of Hawaii. And so they're at Manoa, and she was able to work with athletes there. So we actually both ended up there. Totally separate story, maybe for today, maybe for a different day, but God brought us together in Hawaii. She got placed there with Athletes in Action. I got the job with the judge, completely independent of each other. We actually met 5 years before, playing soccer over in Europe together on a mission trip. And we ended up in Hawaii together, got engaged.
Say that
married.
again. You met in Europe, but ended up in the 808 together?
Technically, we met in Minnesota, training for a trip to go to Europe. Went to Europe, played in Czech Republic, Ukraine, Austria, Germany, played together to turn out a whole different story. But it was supposed to be like, we both thought it was this intense soccer trip where we were going to go play against the best of the best over there. Turns out we were on this co-ed team that got completely annihilated everywhere, but we played together. We actually ended up coaching that team. Totally, again, crazy fun story. So that was 1995. So fast forward 3 years, I get this job with the judge. 2 months later, I get a letter from my now wife saying, "Hey, I just got placed at the University of Hawaii. Will you support me in my ministry?" And I was like, "Sure. How about if you find me a place, I'll support you at some minor little level that I can as a law student." So she found me a place. We ended up over there together. Never, ever a romantic thing until 6 months into our time there. God said, "This is the one for you." I told her. 2 weeks later, we were engaged. 9 months later, we were married. And a month after that, we got pregnant with our first kid. So you know, a lot of people think you kind of work and fast forward, and well, that's kind of an example of how I do that. And then we moved out to Atlanta together. Both of us are California kids. She's from Pleasanton, and we've started our family out in Atlanta. So that, you know, it's been, again, just open. I often say, especially lately over the last 18 months or so, I feel like I'm just following the next breadcrumb that God's putting down for me. And that's really been the story of my life. It's just that next thing. Some of it makes sense. Some of it makes no sense. It's just like, okay, to have that faith and to have that courage to take that next step and go, I don't know exactly what this looks like, but let's go for it and see what happens. And then, you know, in hindsight, you can see a lot of the things and the pieces of the puzzle, but in the midst of it, it was just a lot of, man, let's go and try this new adventure and see what happens. And it's been amazing. It's been really an amazing ride.
Wow. I mean, let's go over your life lessons of being a Mission Viejo kid, because though I'm still just learning what soccer is all about, because my two kids they love soccer. And my son is playing right now. You know, they're about to get into the season here pretty soon after their jamboree here in Elk Grove, California.
Nice.
Well, let's talk Mission Viejo. What are some of the life lessons that you would like to share with all of us that are taking notes and want to develop, want to level up, get better in our lives? And then for the younger audience, like what are some life lessons that you want to share from Mission Viejo that you learned that you feel like God is telling you need to talk about this? What is that?
It's interesting you say that, because I teach at William Jessup University a class on orphan and vulnerable children. And just yesterday, I was talking with the students about one of the interviews I was able to do on the Think Orphan podcast with Propaganda. He's a hip hop artist, great dude. But we were talking about the fact that he grew up in Compton, and I grew up in Mission Viejo. 45 minutes separated us. But actually, I don't remember if it was Compton. It was right around Compton. Anyway, I would say Compton because I had just watched the movie Straight Outta Compton right before I interviewed him. Right. And what it really brought to light was that movie was made. I mean, it was made about a time when I was growing up in Mission Viejo. Right. Late 80s, early 90s, Eazy-E, all those guys. I knew nothing about that.
Right.
The lesson that I've learned, like, it's really in hindsight, I didn't know I was learning it. I was protected in this bubble of Mission Viejo, this suburb, which is very similar to Folsom, similar to Elk Grove, similar to these suburbs of cities. And it's really a bubble. And what I learned after the fact was I need to learn about other people who are not like me, who are not from where I'm from, who are not experiencing the same thing that I'm experiencing, not just so that I can, learn about the world, but so I can learn about how I can be a better, more complete human being, how I can understand their cultural language as much as their, as I've traveled the world and what I do, I've been very fortunate to be able to go to almost every continent. If anyone in Australia wants me to bring me over there, I'd love to hit that. And then Antarctica, I could do some research maybe, but I've been on 5 of the 6 continents. It's amazing. And that's incredible. 5 of the 7 continents. That's incredible to be able to do that. But what I've learned is there are languages that, and I say this, it's not necessarily out of Mission Viejo, but it's something I never learned in Mission Viejo because we're speaking English, we're speaking one cultural language. Even, we have diversity kind of in racial diversity and ethnic diversity at the time in the 70s, 80s, early 90s. It wasn't really that ethnically diverse, but we had, so we were pretty much the same.
Right.
And I didn't learn a lot about that. So coming out of that, like looking back, knowing that when I go travel the world, it's not just learning a language of a verbal language. It's learning a cultural language.
Say that again, Phil, for the audience so they can get that.
There are different languages that we've learned, right? So there is the culture that we grow. There's the language that we speak, English, Spanish, Russian, whatever. Right. And then there's the cultural language that we speak. And when I was talking with Propaganda, we realized, because we were talking about how can we bridge the racial divide? And really, it's not rocket science, it's relationship, right? And it's talking about, hey, I need to have conversations with you. And there's things that if I would have just taken a drive up the 405, we could have had conversations and actually understood each other and understood the cultural divide that we had. We speak the same language. We're from the same state. We're from the same country, but we're from different worlds. Right.
Real
and
talk.
So
that's
what does
talk.
That look like? And how do we bridge that? We bridge that by me sitting down at a table with you, sharing a meal, getting to know you, understanding each other, knowing what that looks like. And it's going back to that learning posture, right? It's not I know you because you're California, or I know you because I've watched a movie about gangs. I watched Boys in the Hood, so I know you. No, I don't know anything about you. Right. And just because you're Black doesn't mean I know anything about you because I studied or I know of another Black friend or, you're right. That is, it's not, I don't know you. Same way I don't know another white dude if I don't get to know him or her. Right. So those are the things that I really, as I grew up in Mission Viejo, I wasn't like, my parents didn't purposefully shelter me from that.
Right.
We housed swimmers from all over the world. So I guess, as I'm saying that, this is a lesson that I learned. I didn't even know I was learning these lessons when I was a kid. My parents housed swimmers because the Mission Viejo Nadadores, right? That they were the best swim team in the country, one of the best in the world. The coach was the Olympic coach. So people came from all over the world. My parents housed kids. I talk to my mom all the time and joke about it, that it's her fault that I'm now traveling the world and she's scared all the time. I go to all these places around the world because we housed people from Japan, Germany, New Zealand. We housed people from all over the country, and it was amazing. I was able to meet these people from around the world. So from an early age, what I learned was we're people. People are people. Right. They were the funniest, funnest, amazing, incredible people. People from some countries, weren't people I necessarily wanted to hang out with. There were two dudes came from Poland. They weren't the same. Right. One guy was a dude who didn't go to school ever. He didn't care about it. He was a world record holder in swimming. The other guy was one of the coolest dudes I've met in a long time. He wasn't as good of a swimmer, but what I realize is just because you're from Poland doesn't mean you are XYZ, right? People are people, and we struggle the same struggles, hopes, fears, dreams. And so that's something that I took to what I do today, right? It's just something that I was able to say, man, if just these little cross section of people that come through my house were different and yet the same in some ways, right? Then what does that mean for all these different things that we're doing around the world? And we come in and we think we know certain things and we make certain assumptions. And interestingly, now in what I do today, part of what I do as you talked about the DISC, modeling human behavior, I'm seeing that our personality styles are different languages as well. So we have the language we speak verbally, we have the cultural language, and we have our personality styles. So I need to understand you, and your personality and who you are is more complete than your personality style. It's more complete than the language you speak. It's more complete than, it's more than where you grew up. It's more than the color of your skin. It's more than where you are in birth order. It's all those things and more, right? And whether you had trauma in your background, all these different things. So anyhow, there's a whole lot more, but as far as you talk about Mission Viejo, what I learned, I appreciate that. Yes, there were some very amazing things that we talk about. And there's a lot of talk about privilege nowadays.
Yep.
And I talk to so many people about, be careful about minimizing the quote unquote, or overemphasizing privilege based on material things. Right? Because when I go travel the world, I see that, yes, we in the US, me as a white male growing up in the United States, I have certain privileges. I have certain material things. I have certain things, leg ups, hand ups, whatever you want to call it. Yes, absolutely.
Right.
But what I can see when I go travel the world, I've often said, I think I was born on the wrong continent or the wrong area of the world, because
real talk. Right.
What we are poor in the United States, and especially in the suburbs, is community. And to see that the community rich environments that I've seen in Honduras and some of the poorest people that I've seen when I go to Ethiopia, when I go to Uganda, when I've been to these different places and regions where I've gone to the slums, and I see some of the richest community I've seen anywhere. Now they're struggling because they don't have the resources and the means to do things, but they're walking places together. They're doing life together. Where we here in the US and in the suburbs, often, not always, but you have to work at that community. You have to intentionally be in relationship with people. You have to intentionally not only put it on your calendar, but prioritize it on your calendar to have dinner with people, even your neighbors. Half of the time, people don't even know their neighbor because they come, pull up that garage door, walk in, and don't even, they go to the mail and they see their neighbor and they're like, hey, how you doing? But you don't even know their story. You don't even know anything about them, right? So those are things that, I could go on and on about that, but I know we got some other things to talk about. But those are things that I love looking back and seeing. And as I raised my kids, we lived in Honduras for 7 weeks when they were younger, because we wanted them to see those lessons that I was able to learn, even housing those people, but the lessons that I've been able to learn all around the world when I talk to them. I want this world for them to be really small. When they meet anybody, they don't treat them differently because of the color of their skin or where they're from or their background. They see them as human beings who are children of God, who have special gifts and talents, who are amazing things to offer each other, and that we can come in and we have incredible things to learn from each other, to have that mutual respect and admiration of these different people, no matter what. Right. So that's what I want my kids to be able to learn, even though we're raising them in a similar environment than I was raised in. But I will say that they are hopefully learning different lessons than I learned. And as I see my daughter up in Canada right now, as I see my son down in Southern California going to college, and the conversations I get to have with them. Let me share this quick story, and then we can move on to something else. But
Sure,
my
please.
daughter was really cool. She actually said to me the other day, she said, "Dad," this is my oldest, and she's at school at Trinity Western University up in British Columbia. She said, "Dad, do you get paid for these podcasts you're doing?" And I was like, "No, not really. No,
Yeah.
no."
Right.
And she goes, I said, "There's something I hope you'll understand someday, that I don't get paid in money, but my why is to help others flourish and to make good things better." And that's what I get to do through these podcasts. And I hope you understand that someday, that it's not about the money. And you know that I was an attorney for 8 years, left that to go full-time nonprofit work. And you guys, yeah, you weren't able to do certain things, and you weren't able to, have certain things that your friends were doing and having in here in Folsom. But hopefully what you learned is that life's about so much more than that, and that we are here to serve and to love others and to pour into their lives, and with the hope that we can help them to be better. We can help
I love
them
that.
to flourish. And she stopped, and it was really cool. She says, "No, Dad, I get it. I get it." And I was like, all right, we've done something right, So that's a little insight into Phil Darke right there.
No, I love that. I love that. So in that, we're both Aggies, went to UC Davis, right? So let's talk about the life lessons, because that place totally changed my life as a 23-year-old dropout coming back to play Division II football. For me, that place really put some structure, discipline, and a cultural, as you talk about, as in a cultural approach to success and achievement. And that even though we beat the socks off of people when I was at UC Davis, right, it wasn't even about winning, right? So two things I'd like you to bridge, because you're already alluding to this, is one, there's money in the transaction, but the wealth is in the relationships, right? And so I totally teach off of that in terms of my business coaching, success coaching in Fortune 1,000, 500, and 100 companies, but you're already touching on that. Touch on that a bit, and then talk about some of the life lessons we learned on picnic day and being at UC Davis. What are your life lessons from there?
Well, I can tell you, UC Davis, it was a special experience as well. As I said, every stop along the way that you mentioned, man, I just have a rush of emotion and a rush of memories. And Davis was a place that as I said, I transferred from Cal. I went to Cal to play D1 soccer because I wanted to go play at the big time at the stadium and incredible, whatever. But I realized that wasn't the place for me. My brother was actually playing football at UC Davis as well. And so he was up there. He had started a Christian fraternity. And I was like, I knew it. And it was easy for me to transfer there as a soccer player. So I transferred there, and I came in. And as you said, I had all the, okay, here's why it makes sense. I'm going to play soccer. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. It's good for law school. It's all this. But as you said, the wealth is in the relationships, right? So I ended up joining that fraternity, and the brothers that I was able to make, the friendships I was able to make at Davis they're lifelong relationships that have just I've been able to pour into them. They've been able to pour into me. Some really hard times, but it was just life formation. As you know, so much of your identity is formed in those 4 years or 5 years or 7 years or whatever it is in university, when I was in law school as well, right? Like in the schooling, in those times where you figure out who you are, right? And I think that, as unfortunately, I think adolescence is extended now in our world, but really, I always say, those years 18 to 26 are so key to identity formation. So I look back at Davis as one of those places. I remember conversations on the steps of my apartment building, and just with
Where did you live? Where did you
I
live?
lived at Arlington Farm, 1604. I just took my son to see it the other day. Down
Arlington
Russell.
Farm. Remind me. Oh, right off of Russell by the AMPM, behind the AMPM. Where was
way
that?
down Russell
even
towards
more?
First Baptist Church. It's like
Yep.
down the south side
Yep.
of Davis.
Yep. Yeah.
So, yep. So I was there. We had some amazing stuff going on there. But really the things at Davis that were great, friendships, not only through fraternity, but I played so many intramural sports. I ended up not playing soccer because I loved intramural sports.
Yeah.
I played 12 my last quarter at Davis. So
Yeah.
some of the things I was able to do there were amazing. To be able to take my son back there the other day, and he said the other day, he goes, yeah, I really want to go to UCLA, but if I don't make it there, then I think I want to go to Davis. So I was like, all right, if I get one kid there, that'd be cool. But the memories again, that weren't like I don't remember the classes. I don't remember the grades. I don't remember all the, like you said, the transactional things that you do in college, but those relationships, those friendships, those life lessons that we learn going through those times of, again, soul searching. I think that the memories from Davis that were really the life lessons are more from the standpoint of those hard, deep, soul searching true life. What is the meaning of lifetime questions?
Yeah.
I was struggling and wrestling with those in college. Like, what's the point of all this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No doubt.
Like, that's a pretty heavy question as an 18 to 22-year-old. Right. And I think I was 20, if I remember that conversation. As I'm saying it, I'm picturing it. And to realize that it's got to be more than making money. It's got to be more than just doing stuff every day and going home and going through the same motions tomorrow and getting a promotion and doing it's got to be more than that, or else that's ridiculously depressing to think it's not. So that's where I think had those formative conversations, those formative understandings of, I'm here for a purpose. Now, I hadn't fully fleshed out what that purpose was. I hadn't fully fleshed out my why, like I just can succinctly say now after 46 years on this earth. I'm 47 now. So I guess I'm starting my 48th year on this earth. And, but to be able to see how that shaped me and to be able to look back and see, again, even the people that I was able to touch during that time too. So, it was great. I mean, you talked about picnic day, you talk about, the fraternities, all the doing the Greek week and all the anchor splash and all these different things that we were able to do in that regard, which was amazing. I think back of I just reached out. I'm still doing fantasy football with one of the guys I played softball with all 4 years. One of the great dudes, he's now in Modesto. And so just, again, those friendships, those relationships that some of those guys are now supporting me in the ministry that I'm able to do. And just, again, doing life with people, when you prioritize and you pour into relationships, they will last.
Yeah.
But to be that person, be that person who reaches out and checks in and sees how people are doing. I understand certain personality styles do that more naturally than others. I understand that. But go out of your comfort zone, because you have no idea the impact you'll make when you just simply reach out and say, hey, I was thinking about you. How are you doing?
Yeah.
Let's have a conversation. Then you hop on and it's like time never passed, right? Like you're just going back to the day. So yeah, that brings back a lot of great memories there at Davis.
Yeah. Amazing. But touch on one last thing before we leave Davis, because we're both Southern Cal guys. I'm from Pomona, so I'm from the hood, down the street from Compton, on the other side of the hills from you, right? More inland. And then, so I went to Davis. I went and visited, and I thought I knew what Davis was. And then the first day of school hit, because, we're there in August, and nobody's around until like the mid-teens, and then the 20-something is when school starts for the quarter schools out there, and Davis was that. Just a shock about the amount of bikes, and that I could take a bus from this place. Because down in SoCal, it's like riding the bus. Not a lot of people really subscribe to that. But that we were able to survive, go downtown, go to places. There's a bus line. You learn all the bus lines. And then the amount of bikes. I remember the first day of school when everything really hit, when I thought I knew I've been there for like 6 weeks. I thought I knew what UC Davis was. And then I just saw the amount of bikes, and I'm sitting in the middle of the quad just going, I've never seen anything like this. This is freaking, so talking about culture and language, how did you, I mean, because you might have been in Berkeley. Berkeley might have had a little bit of bikes, but I've never been to outside of the U.S. Only outside of the U.S. do they ride bikes and take public transit like they do at Davis. Am I wrong?
No, not at all. Actually, fun fact about Davis, at least when we were there, is that there are more bikes registered in Davis than people on the census in Davis.
Exactly.
So that it's unbelievable. It really is.
Yeah.
But when you think about that, what that does, again, going back to culture, people are riding together. You're going to typically be having calls. You hop on a bus with people, whether you're just people watching or actually connecting with people. I remember hearing people on the bus and these beautiful girls sitting behind me who had the worst mouths on them ever. And they became unattractive very quickly to learn those type of life lessons, right? And then to be able to teach my kids that, right? Like to say, hey, it's amazing the impact language can have, right? So those type lessons. But you learn a lot about, because you're in community, you're in relationship, whether it's just sitting on a bus with somebody or riding bikes. There, I saw more bike crashes than I've ever seen in my life that were kind of crazy. And they were usually that little, and I don't hate me for stereotyping, but it was that little girl who was nervous and anxious about riding on the bike circles, because we had bike circles. It wasn't stop signs at the roundabouts, and they had no idea how to navigate that, and so they'd be going 2 miles an hour, and that would usually cause the crash. And so it was just, and there were some nasty crashes because, as you said, there were tons of people riding. So those are the things that, and you go back to that and you think about that. You also had to lock your bike up because there was a lot of bike theft, unfortunately, too. If you didn't lock your bike, it was gone. But even that, my son noticed that the other day. My son's 10. He's very aware of his surroundings. He's my little mini me. So he's very people focused, people oriented. He loves people, but he's watching too. So he saw it. He goes, there's a lot of bikes everywhere. And I said, yeah. And that's how we got places, right? That or rollerblades, of course. When I was there was the rollerblade phase. But yeah, the bus too, like you said. Maybe going down to the beach, we'd take the bus here and there. But I didn't take the bus. It was like, no, who would do that?
SoCal.
So, but Davis, it was part of the deal. And so anyway, I loved that part of it because it also was a more fit community. When you got to Cal, we didn't ride bikes at Cal. I mean, maybe some people did, but it was walking everywhere, which was still relatively fit. But the fitness level, it's just part of that ethic. It's part of that culture that you're going to be riding, you're going to be active, you're going to be walking around when you're going. I don't know many people at all. It was not a commuter school at all, which was another part of it. It was great as people came and they were there. So we had a great group on campus, a college life group that was awesome to just again, lifelong friendships. We had other sports, we had other things that people, when you were there, you saw them on campus. So we could have conversations, and you just, it's like one of those things that if you're a people person, you play a game against somebody and then you see them at the student union or whatever, you're going to start a conversation about it, right? Hey, what's going on? And so I will say on the football front, one of my favorite memories, and I've used this story many times about the level of competition in the intramural sports at Davis, which was something that I absolutely loved as well. Again, as just a lifelong athlete, I don't want to play just to play. I want to be competitive, right? So I go out there and played flag football, and I was always that little defensive end on flag football who got around the guy super fast and got the flag really fast. Well, I played against this dude, and he was probably 280. big old 6'4", 280 dude out there, and he's like perfect footwork. His hands are up.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever played flag football at Davis, but we could hit. Like it wasn't, you could use your hands and actually block. It wasn't screen blocking. And he was like perfect form, and I couldn't even think about getting around him. There was no way I was going to touch anything. And so I said to him about 5 plays in, I'm like, dude, why aren't you on the Davis team? You're unbelievable. And he goes, well, I used to play at University of Texas and I decided not to play anymore. So I transferred here and now I'm just playing flag. I'm like, dude, that's not fair. You can't be out here doing that. So anyway, that's the level of play there. So for people who think that intramurals are just some, patsy thing, it's like, no, there's some legit stuff, man.
Especially there, like lacrosse and flag football, there's a contact sport as well as football. I mean, basketball at the rec center, when it's IM Sports, I mean, is a highly competitive. So now you're talking about Hotlanta. So I've been very fortunate to be in Atlanta. And when you talk about a bubble, for me, the first thing that shocked me was the social hierarchy and being the most really saturated Black professional populace that I have ever been around, right? And then so I started reading about it while I was in Atlanta, the first time I've ever went there. And I was just going, there's more Black business owners and Black millionaires and college educated Black people in America, in Atlanta, than anywhere else. And so I grew up in Pomona, so it's very mixed, but that shocked me, right? And I was just like, that guy is the owner of BET. I mean, all this stuff about Black ownership and the amount of millionaires that were people of color, right? When you went from Mission Viejo, you went to Cal, now you went there. Share some life lessons about your interactions there. The food is phenomenal. Atlanta is a major city where you could fly anywhere in the world. It's very similar to LAX. But then it's quite different because when I went to Atlanta and when I'm in Florida and DC, those areas have brown and Black people, but not the same brown and Black people we know. It is a worldwide community in those metropolitan cities. What's your thoughts on that, Phil? And what are some of the life lessons as we continue about culture and people?
Yeah. So Atlanta was a special time. I mean, you skipped over Nashville and Hawaii. And I will say that I bring that up because Nashville is a very different southern city than Atlanta. But then going to Honolulu, and as well as I do, I was a minority on that island, right? Like, so if I'm going to Honolulu, which is one of my favorite years of my life, because of that reason, I was able to learn from amazing, incredible people at our church. I mean, I was one of the 5 white people at the church. Yeah. Just a bunch of, I was the Halle boy over there.
Who's
for
Halle?
sure.
You Halle?
Oh, absolutely. I was Halle, but I was Kama'aina, dude. I took those rates to play some good golf over there as a Kama'aina, but I was not Kama'aina. I was the Halle boy for sure. But but we are Pauhana today. It is Friday, right? So anyway, that's a whole different conversation. But again, going to that understanding, but going to Atlanta again, growing up where I did, I was in a bubble, but for whatever reason, I never, people are people. Like I was saying, we had people in our house. So I get to Atlanta, and one of my best friends, and he still is a great friend to this day. I reach out to him. I stay with him when I go to Atlanta. Robert Bozeman. We're not doing shout outs yet, but shout out to Robert Bozeman, one of the best trial lawyers in Atlanta, Georgia. Still, he was one of the top 50 Black lawyers in Atlanta, Georgia recently. Just amazing dude, man of God. Was able to go to his son's baptism when he was younger. His son is now in college, of course, but his son and my daughter shared a birthday party when we were 3. I mean, we did life together. He was one of my best friends, and we had some incredible conversations. I actually talk about this on that interview with Propaganda, but the relationship I had with Rob, and then another great friend who's a Black man who's now a partner at the firm I worked at, King and Spalding, big, huge firm in Atlanta. But Harold Franklin's now a partner there. Robert is one of the best trial lawyers there. Robert and I would have these conversations, and he would say to me, he goes, Phil, you have no idea what it's like to be a black lawyer in a big law firm. And I looked at him and I said, you are absolutely correct. But let me put something right back at you, Rob, is you don't know what it's like to be a white person in a law firm.
Real talk.
Right. And I
talk,
said, absolutely. So let's learn. Help me understand. Help me understand, you know, and I was an associate with them. I didn't have the ability to change anything. But what I could do is understand my brother and understand, you know, him understand me and us to do life together and say, so he has this place, this day, he goes, hey, I want to take you to where I grew up. And I was like, I would absolutely love that. And so he took me from my house in Decatur, Georgia, out in the east side of town. It's a, you know, community, very, very mixed community as far as race, gender, one of the biggest homosexual communities in the country at the time. I don't know where it stands today, but it was very, very diverse. But he takes me across Memorial Drive there, which for whatever reason in cities is often dividing the white and black communities.
Yes, sir. Yes.
And he says, he looks at me, my great friend, who's this black guy who said, you don't know what it's like to be black. And he looks at me, goes, hey, Bill, I just got to warn you right now, you're entering Chocolate City. And I started laughing. I'm like, dude, are you allowed to say that, bro? Like, am I allowed to say? I don't know, you know, so I'm saying it now. So I apologize if it offends anybody, but he said this and I looked at him, I started laughing. He says, I say it jokingly, but here's the problem is it actually is, this is where black people had to live back in the 60s.
Yeah.
And he said,
right.
the further away we go, the closer you get to the suburbs for the black community. I mean, this is stuff I never even, and no one ever talks about this in Mission Viejo. No one ever talks about this in Nashville. No one ever talks about this in most places because you don't see it. But in the Deep South, in the 60s, obviously, it was a completely different world, even in the major city of Atlanta, right? Both his parents were educators, teachers, but they were teachers in the black schools, right? So everything was completely and totally segregated. Now, his parents are amazing. I've met both of them, incredible parents. They raised him to know that he could do anything and he could, you know, reach his dreams and work hard. And he did, right? Not every kid has that opportunity. Not every kid has that ability. Not every kid has those parents. And that's where I look at it and go, so much of it, and this is why I do what I do with orphan and vulnerable children and fatherlessness. So much of it is not having that mom and that dad speaking truth into your life. Of you have amazing gifts and talents. You have the ability to do, you know, and now there are realities in life. I'm not the guy who says if you achieve it or dream it, you can achieve it, because I'm not going to dunk a basketball as long as I live at a 10-foot rim. I can go to 8 feet and maybe dunk it if I get a good hop, but I don't have hops, whatever. So you can't do anything that you put your mind to. That's just rubbish. But if you have the gifts and talents to be able to do something, you work hard enough, you put your mind to it, you're able to do things more than you can think of, imagine, especially in Christ, right? If you're doing that, it is something that we can do more than we think. And whether it's the white kid from Mission Viejo or the black kid from the deep inner city, wherever, you're able to do more than you can imagine if you really want things, if you really are able to work hard, put your mind to things. And, you know, and I'm not here to pretend that there aren't barriers for more barriers for some people. There absolutely are. And I have, you know, I had some barriers, whatever, but they were totally different barriers, different things. You know, some of mine were just assuming that I'm going to be successful because I'm a white man. That's not true either. Right. Just because I have this. Right. So those are all things that I was able to learn in community with my brother. And I still, to this day, when I go visit Rob, because obviously over the last few years, there's been major, major issues in our country with race relations. And so I'm going to go talk with Rob and we have these conversations still. And he's like, yeah, Phil, but you still don't get it. You still don't understand. And I'm like, you might be right. But the problem is I don't want to believe that I can never understand it. I don't want to believe that I can never talk to you. I will never be a black man in America, just like I'll never be a Honduran, just like I'll never be an Ethiopian. But if I go there, I want to learn as much as I can to be able to do life with you and connect with you. Otherwise, we'll always have this wall up and you say, well, you just don't get it because you're not me. And I'm like, yeah, well, you don't get it that you're not me. So we could stop there and in there, or we could say, Okay, now what do we do about it? How can we do life together? How can we share a meal together? How can I have you at my house? How can I stay at your house? I mean, that's what I tell people. I'm like, there's these different levels of friendship and relationship, right? If I meet you on a golf course, we sit in a golf cart for a few hours. That's much better than just sitting on a Zoom call or get on a phone call. But it's not sharing a meal around a table. So you go from like hanging out in a golf cart to sharing a meal or sharing a coffee, whatever. That's good. Sharing a meal at a restaurant, then sharing a meal at a home, that goes to a totally different level. I'm like, if you're
Right.
sharing a meal in my home, whether you like it or not, you're family with me, right?
Yeah, no
Like, because
doubt.
that's the level that you
No
can't. And
doubt.
then if you stay the night at my house, all right, well, then you're just in. You can't get out of this thing, right?
Yeah.
And so those are the things that I'm looking at it going, how can we do that more and more with people in everything that we're doing? As I talk about my why is to help others to flourish and to make good things better, right? I hope that I've earned credibility in that with people when I really seek to know them and understand who they are, because I can't help you to flourish if I don't know you. I
Mm,
can't help you to be better if I don't know you. Otherwise, I'm going to impose my assumptions of who you are onto you. And I'm going to try to make who I think you should be rather than who you're supposed to be.
oh,
And
that's
that's
good.
something that we
Mm-hmm.
absolutely have to understand. It's why I train on personality styles, because just we can't make assumptions because someone has the exact same upbringing as like I can't make the assumptions of the kids in my own house. My 5 kids are different from each other, completely different from each other, right? So if I'm making assumptions of them because they're my kids that were from my wife and I together, so I'm going to raise you all the exact same, that would be a tragedy
Yeah.
to each of them,
Good.
right? So if
Mm-hmm.
that's the case in my house, it's absolutely the case for everyone else that I meet in the world. I need to understand you. I need to seek to know you. I need to really do life with you. And you know what? That's why I talk all the time about we need to earn the conversation with each other. That's one of the big problems of social media. We don't earn the conversation on social media. We just throw bombs out there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's why if there's ever these debates, I'll say, hey, let's connect offline and let's get to know each other. Now, I want you to know your story, where you're coming from. Then we can actually understand deeper these different arguments that we have. And you know what? The reality is, if we start with what we agree on, if we start with the fact that we're humans and go from there, rather than starting with what we disagree on, we'll get so much further. And there's actually
I
a
love
chance in this
that.
world, right? So
I love that. I love that. I love that whole approach. Our connection has just been delayed, but needed, and we need to connect, and we need to connect
mhm.
more. Fortunately for me, things have just like exploded in terms of opportunities and coaching groups and coaching coaches all over the world. But I do need to scratch out some calendar time so we can connect. But I love these thoughts and I love these approaches, and I love that whole doing life thing together. Like, why not? You know, I get that if you don't want to, that's cool. But if you're willing and you want to, and we can bring value either together to one another's lives and to our community, why not? So I love that notion.
Yeah.
In that, Phil, what would be, and take 2 minutes as we're starting to wind down here. What would be your message to the world? What's Phil Darke's message to the world?
I think it goes to what we just talked about, right? It's this
Mm-hmm.
idea of how can we serve and love each other using our specific gifts and talents, right? So when you look at what I do, I'm able to have 3 podcasts, as you talked about. I'm able to talk to a lot of people in different backgrounds, I don't know who most of them are, and I'll never meet most of them, but I've been able to meet some of them. A message to the world for me is, you know, this life is about more than us. I don't know what each of you
Mm,
believe that are listening, but I'm a Christian. I believe that this life is the purpose of our life is to glorify God and enjoy him forever. Okay. So everything I do is through that filter. If
mm,
you don't have a why, if you don't know your why, then you're just wandering through life. Okay. Now, knowing your why isn't simply sitting in a room for 20 minutes and going, okay, here's my why. There's a great book. It's called Living Forward. Michael Hyatt wrote it with Daniel Harkavy. And he suggests, and he's not the only one to do it, but I went through this plan for it took 3 days, set them aside. And it was starting with the end in mind, writing your eulogy, right? So then you put that through the filter, and as you distill that down into, and then he didn't really talk about the know your why or state your why in that, but I took from that. And then he has life accounts where you have your 9 prioritized life accounts from, God to my wife, to my kids, to, going down. What you see doing that is, what is the real priority, right? Most people, whether we say it or whether we actually want it to be this or not, our priority is work, right? That's where we're spending most of our time. That's where we're spending most of our mental energy and presence and everything, right? When we get home, we're thinking about it. We're not present, And so to be able to say, if my wife is my priority, if God is my priority, how am I showing that, right? So that's one thing. But then also to know that if we don't know our why, that goes beyond just for this year. It's not like your why changes every year, every 6 months. The why is like that mission statement that never changes. So know your why. You hear that start with why, whatever. It's usually in the context of business. And so often businesses, we know the why, we know the mission, we know the vision, we know the values, we know the objective, we know the 10-year plan, we know the goals, we know all these things. And we spend all this time
for ourselves or our family.
Ourselves. We don't do it.
Yeah.
Right. How many of you written a personal mission statement for yourself, for your family, have had that vision, values that your family knows, and as I'm saying this, I'm convicted myself because we've talked about doing it with the family. We know generally, my wife and I do, but we haven't had our kids memorize. We don't have our kids understand and know why we're doing what we're doing a lot of the time. They know generally, like I talked about my daughter, but that's through osmosis, right? Like that's by chance, right? Are we intentional in understanding our why and living out our why? That's something that takes time to understand and develop. Take the time that you would in your business, because you know what? It's your legacy is what's going to leave you here. I mean, that's what you're going to leave here.
Yes,
with
sir.
Your family, with the people that you touch. And if you don't have that intentionality in doing it, it's also, by the way, going to make it hard to know what to say no to in your business, in your life, in the relationships you have. Because if I know that my purpose, my why is to help others flourish and make good things better, I know that all these things over here that aren't that are easy no's.
That's right.
Easy no's. Because you and I both know, and you just talked about it, there are so many great things that we could be doing every day. The more successful you are, the more opportunities for great things you have every day to do.
Yeah.
If you aren't intentional with your why and choosing wisely and discerning which of those things you're supposed to do, you're going to be missing out on a lot of things that you're supposed to be doing.
I love that. Yeah. Being able to focus, prioritize, make sure that you're fully aware so you're not neglecting and being blindsided by neglect. I love all of that, Phil. I love all of that. Phil, take 2 minutes. What are your projects that you want to make sure people know about and how they can help you, and how can people get a hold of you, Phil?
Yeah. So I'll start with getting a hold of me. I mean, you can do so pdarke@providenceworld.com, PDARKE @providenceworld.com. And then I'm on Twitter, Phil Darke, Facebook, Phil Darke, Instagram, Phil Darke. Try to keep it simple. Also, How Soccer Explains Leadership podcast. Check that out on Apple, Spotify, whatever. Think Orphan podcast. So Soccer Explains Leadership has about 46 episodes. Think Orphan 177. Interviewing people, mostly interview style. Done over 200 interviews. Absolutely love doing that. Just amazing, incredible people. Been interviewing them about leadership, about how they're loving kids, parenting, marriage, engaging people. Like I said, I interviewed propaganda on race issues, some other folks on how we can actually engage conversation with people we disagree with, parenting. So those are some easy ways to connect with me. The Coaching Character podcast, we're launching here. We just launched actually with Greg Rosler, Coach Roz.
Awesome.
He was a former NFL player and a coach, high school coach. So that's really about helping people understand how they can incorporate character and leadership into their coaching. So those are all ways that you can connect with me, the projects that I'm a part of. Thing I'm really, really excited about. And I talked about the DISC training as well. If that's something I've just spent a couple weeks out in Texas working with Baylor University, University of Louisiana, University of Houston, Dallas Baptist, William Jessup out here in California doing their women's soccer, women's volleyball teams. If you're a coach, if you have an organization, that's something that I can help you with that. If you want me to do that, you can reach out to me at that email. The last thing, and something that I'm really excited about seeing happening is I've been working with orphan and vulnerable children in that ministry for about 12, 13 years.
Right.
It's now transitioning to, I'm not leaving that space, but it's incorporating in sports ministry, sports. When you throw a ball in a field anywhere in the world, kids come.
Amen.
Right. And so
Real
what we
talk.
see is that we can speak truth into the lives of these kids as we build trust on a field, playing a sport. A lot of churches start out of that. A lot of orphanages start out of that.
Yes, sir.
But they have no idea how to care for the kids. So what I'm really working on right now is making the connections, being the conduit between those sports organizations who are connecting with these kids on the field and these orphan care organizations who know how to love them with excellence and saying, how can we do this together? So that's really through Providence World, which is providenceworld.com. If you want to help out that cause, you can reach out to me. We can talk about it. Love for you to, you can always donate things as well that way. So those are the things I'm working on, never a dull moment. Obviously raising 5 kids is a full-time job too. And being a husband that I can look in the mirror and say, I'm a husband that I want to be, that's a full-time job as well. So that's what I'm working on, man.
Dad, love it. Love it. Shout outs. What are your shout outs?
I already gave one to Rob Bozeman. I wasn't expecting that one,
Shout out Rob,
Mom
Atlanta.
and Dad, of course, love you. Yep. I know my mom and dad are listening, so that will be 2 more downloads for you or whatever you're doing here. Mom and Dad, I love you. You know that. Hopefully, it's my wife and kiddos. My wife, if I know her well, probably won't be listening to this, but that's okay. I love her anyway. She's my best friend, an amazing woman. But honestly, I want to just shout out all of you folks out there who are working hard to love well, working hard to do life with those in your communities, and not just doing it for the dollar and the bottom line and saying, I want to make more money. Not that making money is bad in of itself, but what really seeking to go beyond that, to say, how are we helping bring a little shalom to the communities around us? How are we bringing that community, raising that community up, bringing more love, adding to the leadership of the community because of the ethics and the values that we live every moment by, that people are watching. Whether you know it or not, you're leading people. Whether you know it or not, people are watching you. And I just want to shout out you guys who are living this out, that we talk about ethics and we talk about values and we talk about making a mark in the world, and you're actually working to do that for the sake of others and for the sake of our world, not just for the sake of the P&Ls and making money.
Good talk. That's good talk. I love that. So in that, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to the Coach V Show. We're going to start summarizing some stuff up here, which is for the Coach V hot seat. Get a couple of phrases and or quotes out to Mr. Phil Darke, our guest here today. And just thank you so much for tuning in, right? And in that, Phil, talk to me about this. Shalom. Tell the audience what shalom is.
Shalom is this idea of, we talk about peace, world peace. We talk about harmony. We talk about people getting along. We talk about how we can stop war and stop fighting and stop the shalom. Really is something, it's a word that there is no real translation for it in the English language, which is why I still use it. It's throughout scripture as this just complete. I mean, again, there's no word for it. So there's this complete harmony, peace, all those things in one, where we have this perfection as the world was intended when God created it, right? It's this perfection of our world that we can't even imagine, that feeling and that peace and that community and that perfect harmony of people actually living in, doing life together that we talked about in a way that is truly life-giving to everyone around you, and they're giving life to you as well, right? So it is this symbiotic community where we are helping each other to be the best we can be. We are helping each other for a common goal and a common vision. We are actually working, as we talk about in the Christian faith, to working to make all things new, right? To bring it back to that perfection of Eden, that perfection of Genesis 1, that perfection of this, and God created it and it was good. Right. This moment of that good is probably the biggest understatement in all of the world.
Real talk. Amen.
It was, so that is that shalom of that. We can bring it to the way it was intended to be.
I love that.
When we talk about justice, I talk about justice all the time. And we talk, because the world talks about justice all the time. The thing that I talked in my class yesterday, I talked about that class and I said, what is justice? And most of the time it comes to something like to make wrong things right, or to right the wrongs. And I said, well, the great, and yes, that's very good. The thing that we lack and miss most of the time is that we need a right. If we're truly going to have justice, it has to be an absolute, never changing right. Otherwise, justice is a moving target, continually moving target, right? So that's something that shalom is, that actual making things right in the way God intended it to be, in the way we see in scripture, in that perfection of Genesis 1, Genesis 2, and the end of Revelation, where we're seeing the streets of gold, right?
Yeah,
it's that shalom. So when I say how can we bring a little bit of shalom to the
shalom
communities we're in?
Yes, sir.
Right? We're not going to bring shalom, but we can bring that taste. We can bring that idea of what are we working toward, right? How can we be an agent for that? So that's what I'm talking about there.
That's it right there. And the last thing, and take a minute, because we are getting stringent on time and strained on time here, is faith and hope is so important. And as both of us are faith-based guys, I cuss more than you do, but because I'm a football faith Christian guy. But still, the irony that without faith, nothing is possible. With faith, and nothing is impossible, right? But faith and hope alone is not good business strategy. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, you got to work.
That's right.
I mean, there's no qualms about that in scripture either.
Yes, sir.
Paul talked about that, right? If you don't work, you don't eat.
That's right.
Right. And we are created for good works, right? We are created, if you look at Ephesians 2:8-10, a lot of people camp on 2:8 and 9, which is that we are saved by grace through faith.
They don't get to the next verse.
Yeah, it's like, it's not by works so that no man may boast. Okay, sweet. I don't have to do anything. Well, no, you're not off the hook. Ephesians 2:10 is that you are created for good works in Christ Jesus, which were created for you beforehand. You are God's workmanship. You are to, work out your faith with your salvation with fear and trembling, right? There is a sense of works. Faith without works is dead, right? So from the standpoint of that, yes. But also look at Paul in his missionary journey. He didn't just say, hey, you got to give me a bunch of stuff. He was a tent maker. He had a job. He worked every day in the midst of being shipwrecked and flogged and beaten and everything else that he did to share the gospel. He worked. And the other people that were these leaders were fishermen. They were working. They were doing things, right? They went back to their fishing after their 3 years with Christ. So this is the thing that we are to work, and work for the glory of the Lord, like that we will do good works for the glory of our Father in heaven. People will see us working hard. We as Christians, if we have faith in God and we are truly living out scripture, we should be the hardest workers, the best workers that anybody has for the glory of God, because it is for his glory. And people will see us and go, what is different with you? because you talk about faith, hope, you talk about that, yet you're the best worker we've had. You're working hard. So that's what I hope. So I'm going to keep it short. I'm going to stop there, but it's got to be a both and, or else we will have a terrible witness.
Amen. Amen. Man, Phil, thank you so much. Phil, when the studio opens up in Hollywood, will you come in studio? Will you come in studio and do it? Yeah, because I really feel this, and I feel like this is a faith-based message that we are both unapologetic about. And it's not for everyone. And we're only asking your consideration because everyone must choose to subscribe and deploy on their own. Mm-hmm. So thank you so much for Philip. Thank you so much for coming on. And to everyone out there, thank you so much for tuning in here on the Coach V Show on Island City. Every Mana Motivation Monday, you can find us here at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time as your Hollywood radio show for personal development. But let me just end on this. It is just not for success that Phil Darke and I are here, offering for your consideration these success frameworks and these life lessons and these behavioral models. It's not just for the success alone, but for the sake of being your best. In doing so, you'll realize the best of your abilities and that everything that you work and dream for together can be achieved. This is how this success coach and Phil lives, all about faith and family. Grateful for God's amazing grace. Until next time, thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you to Brother Phil for coming on his first appearance, and we're going to figure out when we can do that in studio soon. And until next time, it is your boy Phil and Coach V here in the 916, wishing you and yours nothing but wellness, health, and prosperity today and always. God bless you all. Your boy Phil here and Coach V. Till next time, peace.